Hi, I am Gene Montrestelli, the editor of tappingqa.com, and welcome to a class today where we're going to talk about tapping for feeling worthy. And this is something that shows up a lot because of the time and place that we grew up in and the way that we are trained. And because of our very primitive nature, the sense of belonging is something that is super, super important. My clients, I'm sure, get tired of me talking about this all of the time, but we are genetically predisposed to want to belong because 7,000 years ago, our ancestors were in a situation where if they were pushed outside of the tribe, they would literally die. Not hyperbolically, not metaphorically, but I'm using the term literal in not the millennial sense of the word literal, but the actual definition of the word literal. They would literally die. And because we have this history and the story that has been passed on to us, there is a part of us that desperately wants to belong because of a very, very deep desire for safety, because fear always wins. And so feeling worthy is very akin and very connected to our sense of belonging. And so anytime there is a part of us that feels like we are going to be disconnected from the tribe, it becomes very, very concerned. And so we don't want to take up too much space. We don't want to do something that is unnoticed. We don't want to be in a circumstance where we're causing any sort of waves or any sort of problems. So we keep our heads down. And as we keep our heads down, that story starts to turn into something that says that we are not able or we are not worthy of having that particular thing. Now, for me, if you've listened to my podcast or any of my stuff for any amount of time, you're aware of the fact of how really particular I am about the words that I use and the words that my clients use. And this is for a couple of reasons. The first is when I'm paying attention to the words of my clients is the way that we describe something is the way that we emotionally respond to that thing. And so if I'm saying something, even if intellectually I know that is not true, then I'm going to respond to it in a really particular way. When I'm speaking, when I'm teaching, I'm really particular about the words that I use because I want to make sure that we are on the same page. And so for our conversation today, I am going to make a distinction between worthy and deserving. And this is my distinction. I don't expect you to accept these as the definitions or the words, or that you have to accept this, but this is the way I think about it. Deserve implies something that is a transaction. I do a job, I deserve to be paid. So deserve is implying transaction. Worthy implies something that is intrinsic. You know, in my spiritual vocabulary, I am worthy of God's love. Not because of the life that I live, not because of who I am, but I am intrinsically made to have God's love. So worthy implies the way we are made. Deserve we implies transaction. And so one of the pitfalls that we initially fall into when we're struggling with worthiness is we turn it into a transaction. I am worthy of your attention because I show up in the right way. I am worthy of whatever those things are because I am doing something. And so when we are trying to figure out the sense of worthiness and why we are struggling with that, one of the lenses that we're constantly looking through is the lens of transaction. And am I perceiving this as a transaction, or am I recognizing it as something that is intrinsic about me? And depending on your worldview, we might actually disagree. You might define something as something that is a worthiness issue. I might define it as a deserve issue, and vice versa. But it's important as we're navigating this, we recognize the fact if we see it as something that is transactional or if we see it as something that is implicit. So when we are feeling unworthy or feeling worthy, it is through a particular lens. I am worthy of this because through someone's eyes. And there are lots of different ways that I can define whether or not I'm worthy or not. So it's almost like the arbiter about whether or not I'm supposed to receive this thing is judged particularly through some sort of evaluation through someone's eyes. So that could be God or the universe or whatever vocabulary that you use. It could be our family, past or present. You know, because I am a certain way, I am not worthy of standing inside of my family. Or because I act a certain way, I get esteem inside of my family. And so by looking through someone's eyes, they are determining whether or not I am worthy. Workplace, like the colleagues that we work with, the way that we show up, what are past experiences, where we went to school. Like all of a sudden, the people around us say we do or don't fit in because of different characteristics. Institutions. So, not just the places that we work, but we can be in a situation that we can feel worthy because of a judgment by a church, a school, a government, a club, an association. Any place where there's a sense of feeling like there is belonging or not. And so that is something that we need to pay attention to. Community at large. Now, sometimes the community at large has really explicit standards, and sometimes the community at large has implicit standards. So, for example, like we can see in the media the type of people who are constantly elevated and constantly shown off. And that could be because of their gender, their age, the way that they look, the color of their skin, the education they have. That we see what is given value inside of the culture. And so implicitly, we start to see what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to be, and whether or not we deserve, again, we start mistaking worthy for deserve, attention, opportunities, and things like that. One of the things that has been a real unfortunate thing that has happened over the course of the last decade, as we become more and more aware of body image and how we interact with the way that we look, over the course of the last decade, eating disorders amongst young men have actually gone up. Instead of us being in a circumstance where we are becoming more aware and evolved in our approach culturally, we're actually adding pressure to even more people in the process of that. And so it is a communal norm that is implicit that we are using it as a evaluative tool about whether or not we are worthy. And then ourselves. Sometimes we create arbitrary measuring sticks that we have to live up to. Maybe it's an issue about being perfect, about how we are seen, about what we are capable of, about the standard that we lived up to in the past. And so sometimes I can look at something and say, I am not worthy of this thing because I decide that I'm not doing it good enough. And so whose eyes that we are worthy within becomes really important as we tap on something like this. So then there's who is doing the evaluation or the perceived evaluation, because most of the time when we're tapping, what we're doing is we're untangling the perceived evaluation that is there, that isn't really evaluation. Then there is the measuring stick in what we are worthy of being able to do or have. You know, worthy to exist, worthy to be seen, worthy to be heard. You know, these are very, and you'll see as we go through this list, it's kind of like we're moving up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But I have worked with lots of clients who did not feel worthy to be on this planet. Then we're in a circumstance that I don't feel worthy to be seen with these particular people or in this particular group. Or we might feel like we're allowed to be in the group, but we're not good enough, we are not worthy enough to be heard, that our voice, that our ideas, that our thoughts does not have value. To have opportunities. I don't have the opportunity to pursue this job, to pursue this relationship, to have this money, to move forward in any particular way. To be happy. You know, I've had people who have said that because of my past that I've made enough mistakes, I am not, and again, they use the word deserve, but it's showing up in worthiness. I am not worthy of being happy. It is not something that I should be allowed to do because of my past, because of who I am. And then to thrive. And so you can see inside of this, again, there's this kind of hierarchy from being able to exist to being able to have the highest form of existence. And oftentimes, the sense of worthiness is contextual. So I might feel completely worthy at the office because of the degree that I have and my experience and my place in the team that I'm allowed to speak up. And when I come home at night and I sit around the dinner table with my family, I am not worthy of speaking my mind because I'm the youngest member of the family. And so it is not just this absolute thing that I'm allowed to be heard, I'm allowed to be seen, I'm allowed to be happy. Sometimes it's in the sense of context. I'm allowed to be happy in my daily life, but I'm not allowed to be happy in a romantic relationship. And so the context in which this sense of worthiness is sitting is an important thing for us to dissect. And you'll see in the process when we do tapping here in a little bit, how we unpack these things. But it's good for us to look at in whose eyes, who is doing the evaluation, and then this is what we are allowed to do through the evaluation. And then the last piece of it, come on, is the reason why we feel unworthy in these settings. We might feel unworthy because we are not made for it. I hear clients all the time, particularly when we're dealing with success. Oh, other people are made to have a successful small business, but I'm not made for that. That's a sense of worthiness. Because again, when someone says, I'm not made for it, we're leaning into this sense of something that is intrinsic. It's not that I haven't worked hard enough. It's not that I don't have the expertise. It's not that I haven't put in the time and the effort. I'm just not made for it. It's not for me. Sometimes we feel unworthy, and I've mentioned this a number of times because I've made so many mistakes in the past. That one of the things that happens for people who are in the personal development world is they are acutely aware of their lives because they're doing personal development. And because that is the case, the people who are doing personal development oftentimes recognize the inequity of opportunities and experiences that they are having. The fact that you are in a situation that you have an hour on a Tuesday, you have a computer, you have an internet connection, you have an opportunity to engage in this way means that you're probably doing better than 70% of the human population because you have the space and the capacity to do this. And so because you are aware of the fact that you have more opportunities than many, it's really easy to feel like, oh, I squandered these things in the past. Therefore, I shouldn't be allowed to have any more opportunity, experience, happiness because I had my chance and I blew it and I already had it better than some. So how dare I ask for more? Squandered opportunities in the past. This is very similar to those mistakes. So I've been given opportunities to be happy, to thrive, to have jobs, to have romantic relationships, to have health, and I didn't make good choices. And so it is now my punishment to not have those things ever again because this is what happened. Now, as I say all of these things out loud, when you are not in an emotional space, in a clear-headed space, as you hear these things, you can understand how unfounded those things are. But if that belief is seated in our subconscious mind, then we're going to respond out of that particular thing. Those in authority have told us so. I hear lots and lots of stories from my clients where when they were growing up, an adult, a parent, a teacher, someone who was in their family, someone who simply had control said it was so. And when we are young, we are constantly learning. That is the nature of being young. And so we're taking our cues and we're taking our lessons from the adults around us, from the people in power. And so when someone in power says something, we take it as truth because they have the control and they have the power. Therefore, it must be true. And so it just gets imprinted on us as, oh, that is the thing that is important that I need to take with me. We don't meet community or cultural norms. And these can be things that happen inside of a larger community, but they can also happen inside of a family. Typically, people who are predisposed to tapping and this sort of stuff more than likely grew up in a family where they were the black sheep and they were moving to the beat of their own drummer. So they were constantly on the outside, or if they showed their true selves, they were on the outside. Go back to where we started, the sense of belonging. And so if we are not living up to what everybody says is normal or typical, then we're going to be in a circumstance where we don't feel like we're able to take up more space or have more. Sometimes we feel unworthy just because we feel that way. Sometimes there is not a story. One of the most interesting interviews that I've done in the last couple of years is with Mark Woland, and I actually have another interview coming up with him in a couple of months in the podcast. And Mark is on the leading edge on the epigenetics of trauma. And the epigenetics of trauma basically says it is possible for us to inherit trauma through our genes. That we can take fears, we can take all of these things into our system because it happened a generation before. They do experiments on mice, one, because they can do generations really, really quickly. And they were able to show in a number of studies that they could provide stress from drowning to a mouse. And 3 generations later, the mice, the great grandchildren were afraid of water because of that. And so I only say this because sometimes when we are tapping, we know the more information I have, the more likely I am going to be able to solve this problem. And if I can find the initial root cause or the initial sensitizing event, and I'm able to tap on that particular thing, then I'm going to release this. But there are going to be times, because it is either something that is cultural, that is just in the air, and we just hear something over and over again where there's not an individual moment, or if we are given something because we have inherited it, there's not going to be an initial sensitizing event. And so as we ask these questions in the process that I'm just about to teach you, it's important for us to find as many of those as possible. And at the exact same time, if there isn't one, it does not mean we can't tap, and it does not mean we can't be successful as we unpack that. So before we step into the little process that I've developed to teach you today to navigate this sort of stuff, do you have any questions or thoughts or comments around the idea of worthiness, the places, the lenses that we're looking through, how it is caused, and how it impacts us? Feel free to just sneak into the chat box over there and type any insight or question you have in there, and we'll address those before we step into the process. Okay, awesome. Very good. So the process itself. So this is what the process looks like when we are dealing with a sense of feeling unworthy. So the first thing that we do is we imagine the setting in which you feel unworthy. Now, this could be taking a particular action, or it could simply be being in a specific place. So for example, when the reason why I found my way to tapping is I was dealing with social anxiety. And one of the ways that my social anxiety showed up for me is when I was hanging around people my age, like when I was in college and I was hanging out with my fellow RAs, I always felt like the kid brother who was tagging along, like they were just tolerating my existence as I was there. So it wasn't so much as I didn't feel worthy to have a job or to take a particular action. It was a particular context being around a certain group of individuals. So the first thing that we do is we imagine ourselves in a setting where we feel unworthy. The second thing we do, like processes in the past, is we tune into the place that it shows up in the body. Is it a chattery brain? Is it tightness in the chest? Is it butterflies in the stomach? Do we have feet that want to run away? Is our skin crawling? Because again, we want to be in a situation where we are getting information from the subconscious mind and we are not trying to figure it out consciously. Because the sense of feeling unworthy typically is not a rational sensation. And so for us to be able to pace it out intellectually can be a really difficult thing to do. So we tune into the physical sensation. Once we are tuning into the physical sensation, like we've done in the past, we ask the physical sensation for some information. So the first question is, now you don't have to use this exact words. This is a little bit formal, but according to what standard am I not worthy? So when we feel unworthy, it's because we feel like we are not meeting a particular level. If I was at this level, then I would be allowed to. So according to what standard, why is it I feel unworthy? What standard am I not living up to? You can ask that question in a whole host of ways. Ask the question in the way that makes the most sense for you. The second question we ask after we do that is, who says I'm not worthy? Now, it might not be something as explicit as someone saying, you don't deserve to be here. But we can be in a situation where we think, oh, I am not worthy because these are the people who are judging me. These are the people who are thinking this. These are the people who are evaluating me as not enough. And as we have seen, this doesn't necessarily have to be our people in our lives. You know, it could be our culture, it could be our family, so it's a group of people. It could be something supernatural, the universe, God, whatever. It could be something that is completely internal. Like, I have made the decision that this is the case. And like the processes that I've taught in the past, we aren't necessarily going to have an answer to both of the questions when we ask them. But by asking the questions, we're going to find out whatever information we need as a starting point. And sometimes when we ask these questions and the information comes forward, it immediately liberates us enough so that it is diffused and it goes away. And that sensation is gone just because we've shown the light of day on it. And in other circumstances, that's not the case. That we're going to show up and we're going to present in that way, and we're going to be in a situation where there's stuff that's going to be there. And then, like always, then what we do is we're going to tap. We're going to tap on what comes up. And like I mentioned in the class on Sunday, if you are doing a process like this and you're just working on your own, and maybe you're taking some notes as you're doing it, just take your offhand and tap the entire time you're asking the questions, because it's going to help regulate your emotions in the moment so you feel better as you're doing it. And it is going to give you the opportunity to move through this in a particular way that allows you to start getting clarity as the information is coming forward. So, questions about the process as it is presented. Okay, great. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have pen and paper at hand, I want you to jot down a situation or circumstances where you just don't feel as worthy as you would like to feel. Because sometimes it is this really dramatic thing where I just feel completely out of place. And other times it is something that is subtle and is nuanced, and I just feel a little uncomfortable, and I belong, but I don't really belong. I'm allowed to take a portion, but I'm not allowed to take a full share. And I want you to notice those things. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to just do a little tapping on that. So if you would like to have an opportunity to do a little tapping on that right now, if you click on the participants link at the bottom, it'll give you the whole list of everybody who's on the line. Down at the bottom in the middle of that, there is a place where you can raise your hand, and I will unmute you, and we will do a little tapping, and we will see how this goes. Okay, I am going to start with Gail. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Are you able to? There we go. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, Gail.
Hi.
Great. So give me a little context. Talk to me about the place where you feel like you are not feeling super worthy.
Much everywhere. It's,
What's that?
Pretty much everywhere. It's
Okay.
like a family trait. One in particular, I think, might be the key to it. I was severely burned as a toddler. My mom kept me really close and tight after that. And then she found out she was pregnant again and kind of set me aside, according to her. And that kind of, I think, might be the linchpin.
Okay. So what I want you to do, and I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you very much. And so one of the things that I always like to do in my process is to get as much information as we can, and we can use that as a starting point. And I also want to see what else the subconscious provides for us. So I want you to think of a specific circumstance or setting where you normally feel unworthy, however that feels for you. Could be a work situation, a family situation, a friend situation. Where do you notice it?
Mostly family.
Okay, great. So I want you to just imagine being around your family in one of those settings. And as you feel that sense of worthiness, yes, I know that Gail's a little hard to hear, so I'm going to repeat back what she says to make it easier for everybody. So as you tune into one of those circumstances and you feel that sense of unworthiness, how does it feel? Does it feel like you want to recede into a little ball? Is it a heaviness that is pushing on you? Is it butterflies? How do you experience that sensation?
I feel like I want to throw up and cry and crawl in a hole.
Okay, great. So throw up, cry, and crawl in a hole. And so as we tune into that, trusting your instinct, which one of those symptoms do we start with?
Cry.
Great. So I want you to tune into that sensation of crying and ask that sensation of crying, why does it feel unworthy?
Okay. Because I am.
Mm-hmm. Because you are. And ask that sensation according to who? Who says you're unworthy?
My mom.
Mm-hmm. Tippy top of the head and just move from point to point. Repeat after me, and everybody else tap along with us. I recognize the fact
I recognize the fact
that there is a part of me
there's a part of me
that does not feel
that does not feel
as if I should belong in the family,
as if I should belong in the family,
and I'm not worthy to be there.
and I'm not worthy to be there.
Because I was in a situation
Because I was in a situation
where I was set aside by my mother.
where I was set aside by my mother.
And a mother is supposed to love their child.
And a mother is supposed to love their child.
And a mother is supposed to take care of their child.
The mother is supposed to take care of their child.
And because my mother didn't take care of me
And because my mother didn't take care of me
in the way that I needed to be taken care of,
in the way I needed to be taken care of,
I must not have been worthy of her love.
I must not have been worthy of her love.
It must have been something that I did,
It must have been something that I did,
or who I am.
or who I am.
Because if I actually was worthy of love,
Because if I was actually worthy of love,
then I would have received love from my mother.
then I would have received love from my mother.
Because that's what a mother is supposed to do.
Because that's what a mother is supposed to do.
And because I did not receive that,
And because I did not receive that,
I believe I am not worthy of it.
I believe I'm not worthy of it.
And I recognize the fact
And I recognize the fact
I am making this judgment
I am making this judgment
based on my understanding
based on my understanding
of what the archetype of what a mother should be
of the archetype of what a mother should be
and how she was supposed to act.
and how she was supposed to act.
And I know that my mother was not perfect.
And I know that my mother was not perfect.
And she made decisions for lots of reasons.
And she made decisions for lots of reasons.
And her turning her back on me
And her turning her back on me
wasn't actually about me.
wasn't actually about me.
It was hard on me.
It was hard on me.
It hurt me.
It hurt me.
It hurt my development.
It hurt my development.
It was really unfair.
It was really unfair.
And I am impacted by that choice.
And I am impacted by that choice.
And I'm having to deal with the consequence of that choice.
And I'm having to deal with the consequence of that choice.
But that choice was about her. It was not about me.
But the choice was about her and not about me.
That choice does not say who I am.
That choice does not say who I am.
And it does not say what I'm worthy of in my daily life.
And it does not say what I'm worthy of in my daily life.
I am worthy of being accepted.
I am worthy of being accepted.
I'm worthy of being seen.
I'm worthy of being seen.
I'm worthy of being part of a family.
I'm worthy of being part of a family.
Even if my family is far from perfect.
Even if my family is far from perfect.
I am worthy of being here.
I am worthy of being here.
And I'm worthy of thriving.
And I'm worthy of thriving.
Nice deep breath. And give me a big stretch and just move a little bit for me. And first pass through, what do you notice?
About 3/4 of the way through, my stomach relaxed, and towards the end, I could feel blood rushing through my legs and feet, which I didn't know what before.
Yeah, it's amazing that we don't recognize the tension that we're holding until we start releasing it.
Yes.
Great. So what I want you to do is I want you to go back again, and I want you to rethink about being around the family and in that context. And what do you notice now? Is there still the same crawling into the ball and the tears? Is there something else? What does it feel like now?
I still don't feel like I belong, but I don't feel like I'm going to burst into tears or crawl in a ball.
Great. Excellent. Do this for me. Tippy top of the head. I recognize the fact
I recognize the fact
that there's a part of me that still doesn't feel like I belong.
there's a part of me that still feels like it doesn't belong.
And that makes sense
And that makes sense
based off of the history and the way others act.
based on the history and the way others act.
And it might be the circumstance
And it might be the circumstance
that I never fully connect with my family.
that I never fully connect with my family.
And I don't actually ever feel like I completely belong.
And I don't ever actually feel like I completely belong.
Because I didn't choose my family.
Because I didn't choose my family.
It's just my family.
It's just my family.
And I get to decide
And I get to decide
how I connect and how I engage.
how I connect and how I engage.
And it would be great if I had a really good relationship with my family.
And it would be great if I had a really good relationship with my family.
And I also recognize the fact
And I also recognize the fact
it is possible for me to be happy.
it is possible for me to be happy.
And it is possible for me to thrive.
And it is possible for me to thrive.
Even if
Even if
they don't fully accept me.
they don't fully accept me.
Nice deep breath. Stretch and grab a sip of water if you'd like. Okay, and what do you notice now?
That was very releasing.
Good.
I just felt a peace over my whole body.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, particularly with something like this, as we do these deeper issues like worthiness and acceptance, oftentimes we get to a point where we have relief, and that is as far as we can go, and it doesn't mean that we're done. And so come back to the recording of this, find that particular piece, tap on this again a couple of times, and just continue to just really let it to sink in and feel free to transform the words as the aspects of that change. So excellent. Gail, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Okay, I am gonna go on to Erica. Erica, hello.
Hi. Oh, so hold on. Oh,
You're
good,
there.
thank you.
I can hear you.
Hi. Good to
Hi.
see you, Jean.
Good to talk to you, my friend. So talk to me about how you're feeling a little unworthy right now.
Well, I just, what came up, I wrote down is in promoting my, my private teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had an issue with that for a long time of being, and I think the distinction of deserving and worthy has been very great. And I think it collapses into deserving and comes into worthy. So it
Mm-hmm.
kind of moves around. So, and I think one of the things that I'm a singer, and as a singer, things came easily to me. Like it was the path of least resistance. It was just easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have to work. It felt like I didn't have to work hard. And also when I started my formal music education, I was really young. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you said, I was like somewhat out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was 16. I was 16 when I started university. So I was this, and I was very naive. I was a young 16. So there was always like, I was always like a little behind and kind of, listening. I was the younger sibling too, kind of feeling.
Yep. So I'm gonna stop you for just a moment.
Yeah,
What I want you
yeah,
to do is I want you to tune in specifically to a place now where that
yeah.
sense of unworthiness is showing up, and then we'll unpack the details as we turn into the subconscious.
Okay. Um,
So is it making an offering? Is it standing in front of people and feeling like you're worthy of being able to offer to them? Is it once they've said yes, being able to teach them? Where's the place it shows up?
it's the first one you said. It's presenting.
Great. So I want you to think of a setting in the past or something coming up where you could be presenting what you want to offer. And it could be for a group or it could be for an individual.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Woo.
And as you,
Actually, an experience that I had earlier this year that went very. I'm left with a
great.
awful feeling.
So where's that awful feeling showing up? Is it a heaviness in the chest? Is it a beating yourself up in the head? What does it feel like?
There is a certain amount of beating myself up in the head, and there's this kind of feeling in my gut.
Great. And so as you tune into those sensations, just ask them, why does it feel unworthy for you to be in those settings? Or why does it feel like you're not worthy to make the offer to those people?
Do you want my inner reasons, my ego reasons?
I do. Yep. I would like to hear those things. Yep.
Because I don't know enough yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I should know better. I should
Great.
know. I should already know this.
Yeah. And what proof does it have? Ask the sensation, what proof does it have that you don't know enough?
So if I really know enough and everything, why should I continue learning? There's a weird thing happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Tip top of the head, move from point to point. There is a part of me.
There's a part of me
that does not feel.
That does not feel.
I am worthy of these opportunities.
That I'm worthy of these opportunities.
Because I don't know enough yet.
Because I don't know enough yet.
Because there's always something more to learn.
Because there's always something more to learn.
And how can I present myself?
And how can I present myself?
As an expert?
As an expert?
If I don't know everything.
If I don't know everything.
And so there is a part of me.
And so there's a part of me.
That really believes that.
That really believes that.
I cannot step out as an expert.
I cannot step out as an expert yet.
Until I know everything.
Until I know everything.
But the reality is. I can learn lots of things.
I can learn lots of things.
From people who don't know everything.
From people who don't know everything.
And I regularly learn lots of things.
And I regularly learn lots of things.
From people who don't know everything.
From people who don't know everything.
And I can share what I know.
And I can share what I know.
Without having to know everything.
Without having to know everything.
Because the easiest thing for me.
Because the easiest thing for me.
To underestimate.
who underestimate
is my own expertise.
is my own expertise.
Because my own expertise is effortless.
Because my own expertise is effortless.
And if it feels obvious to me,
And if it feels obvious to me,
it must be obvious.
it must be obvious.
But just because it is obvious to me
But just because it is obvious to me
does not mean it is actually obvious.
does not mean that it's actually obvious.
And so I have so much to share,
And so I have so much to share,
even before I know everything.
even before I know everything.
And there is another part of me
And there's another part of me
that is afraid to know everything,
that's afraid to know everything.
because if I know everything, I'll stop working.
Because if I know everything, I'll stop working.
I will stop trying.
I will stop trying.
I will stop pushing myself forward.
I will stop pushing myself forward.
And I recognize the fact
And I recognize the fact
it is possible for me
it is possible for me
to stay motivated
to stay motivated
without having to learn everything.
without having to learn everything.
It is possible for me to keep moving forward
It is possible for me to keep moving forward
without constantly being a learner.
without constantly being a learner.
When I was very young,
When I was very young,
because I was so advanced,
because I was so advanced,
part of who I was
part of who I was
defined by the fact that I was such a good learner.
was defined by the fact that I was such a good learner.
It's the reason I got attention.
It's the reason I got attention.
And it's the reason I got lots of opportunities.
And it's the reason why I got lots of opportunities.
And there's a part of me that is afraid
And there's a part of me that's afraid
that if I stop constantly learning,
that if I stop constantly learning,
in some way I will lose my standing and my value.
some way I'll lose my standard and my value.
It is possible for me
It is possible for me
to keep moving forward,
to keep moving forward,
to be valuable,
to be valuable,
to enjoy my life
to enjoy my life
while sharing what I have already learned,
while sharing what I've already learned,
knowing that I can keep learning if I want.
knowing that I can keep learning if I want.
But that does not define me.
But that does not define me.
It is not what I am all about.
It's not what I'm all about.
Nice deep breath. And give me a big stretch and move a little bit. We navigated a lot of stuff there. What do you notice?
Whoa. I noticed there was some quite strong emotion coming up at some point. I'm feeling tears in my throat.
Yeah.
A little bit of constriction here, which is okay. Yeah, and it was just other voices saying, well, haven't you learned enough yet? Like, haven't you figured it out yet? Kind of thing. And then there was this childlike quality, like when you, I can't even remember what I said. I'll have to go back and listen.
That's why we record it, so we can go back and listen.
But there was this, like, oh, you mean it can be that easy? It's kind of trusting. There's a little bit of, there was a little bit of, instead of me being me, listening to me, it's like trusting someone else's response.
Yeah.
Or,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that is something that is a very human experience. That again, we are these creatures that are made for community, and part of us longs to have some validation from the people around us. Now, sometimes we seek validation from the wrong sources, but when we have trusted sources who understand the world, it's great for us to hear, yes, that is something that is good, and that is something that is reasonable to have in that way. So excellent. Well, you got some tapping that you can go back to and do again and again.
I will. Thank you so much, Jean.
You bet. Okay, let's see here. I was going to grab a question here, and then we're going to go back over to my list. Generally, the tapping script is given in a more or less monotone voice. Is that important? Can we add inflection, emphasis, or emotion? When we are tapping, we are going to get the most out of tapping the more tuned in that we are to what we are experiencing. So when you are tapping, and you heard Erica do that as we were going along, you could hear her going up and down with emphasis and making things more declarative. When you're tapping with someone, if you want to change your language, go right ahead, say the words that make sense to you. There's actually, I have a really interesting podcast on the website about the scientific research about the healing value of using profanity while you are tapping, because our swear words actually live in a different part of our brain. They live in the emotional part of our brain than the rest of our verbal vocabulary. And so it works really well. My friend Pamela says, I work in 2 modalities. I work in profanity and I work in tapping. If that's not something you are comfortable doing, some people that actually causes more problems than good because of their upbringing, that's great. But know that the more that we can be in tune and connected to what we are doing, the easier it is going to be for us to clear stuff. So definitely add emphasis, say it in the way that works for you, go for it. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to move on to Anna Maria, and I'm going to unmute. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself. You should be able to now. Hello.
Hi, Jean.
How are you?
Pretty good. So glad to be here. Hey.
Excellent. So talk to me about a place right now you're not feeling very worthy.
Yeah, so in perfect timing, as always, I had an interaction with my mom a couple of days ago, and I was already aware of this area where I am feeling some tension and needing to tap on.
Mhm.
And this interaction heightened it. And it is feeling that I don't fit in with
Mhm.
the family, specifically the women in my family.
Yeah.
They're all married. My mom, my 2 sisters all got married, really young, didn't have to date. There was, no online dating, no, coffee meets bagel or anything like that. And kind of the guy just showed. And there's 2 parts to it of feeling unworthy, of not feeling like I fit in to that
Mhm.
model because I'm single, I'm not married, and also wanting to be
Yep.
in that space.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Great. Tip top of the head and just move from point to point. I recognize the fact
recognize the fact
that my life looks different
that my life looks different
than the women in my life
than the women in my life,
and the women in my family,
the women in my family,
the women I'm closest to.
the women that I'm closest to.
And it is something that
And it's something that
they get to share
they get to share
and they get to be connected about,
and they get to be connected about,
which I feel like an outsider.
which I feel like an outsider,
Even if
even if
they're not trying to exclude me
they're not trying to exclude me
in some conscious way,
some conscious way.
I am excluded
I'm excluded.
because I don't have the common experience.
They don't have the common experience.
I don't have the common vocabulary.
I don't have the common vocabulary.
And because that is the case,
Because it is the case,
I'm different.
I'm different.
And it's really difficult
And it's really difficult
to have these women
to have these women
who I am so close to
who I'm so close to
in a way that I'm not close to anyone else.
in a way that I'm not close to it with anybody else.
And I am excluded from that.
And I'm excluded from that.
And that hurts.
And that hurts
because it's such a big part of their experience.
because it's such a big part of their experience.
It's such a big part of how they exist in the world.
Such a big part of how they exist in the world.
And at the exact same time,
And at the exact same time,
there's a part of me that feels desperate
there's a part of me that feels desperate.
because I'd like to have that experience too.
Because I'd like to have that experience as well, too.
I'd like to be connected in that way.
Being connected in that way.
And so I am missing something I would like to have.
I'm missing something that I'd like to have.
And I'm reminded of that fact
I'm reminded of that fact
by the women who are closest to me.
by the women that are closest to me.
And I also recognize the fact
And I also recognize the fact
that is not the only thing we share.
that's not the only thing we share.
It's not the only way that we are connected.
That's not the only way that we're connected.
And I give myself permission
I give myself permission
to recognize I do belong with them,
to recognize that I do belong with them.
that I am truly connected to them
I truly am connected with them.
in big and small ways.
And big and small ways.
Because there are connections that I share
Because there are connections that I share.
with all three of them,
All three of them
which are unique to each of the relationships.
that are unique to each of the relationships.
And I give myself permission
Give myself permission
to recognize my worth as a human
to recognize my worth as a human.
and my value in the family
My value in the family
is not defined by
is not defined by
my marital status.
my marital status.
Nice deep breath. Give me a big stretch and move a little bit. Great. And what do you notice?
And I noticed as we were tapping is it flashed with the interaction I had with my mom a couple of days, and they're very kind and not at all. Let me go to my mom, not judgmental or shoulda, coulda, woulda. But
Mhm.
one question she asked me was, "What do other people say when they do? They wonder why you're not married."
Mhm.
She sincerely wanted to know, especially
Yeah.
there's a friend that's a doctor. What does Dr. Eliza say? Like really wants to know. And it's like, I
Right.
appreciate that your question, and it bothers me at the same time. Like there's some like, what did the experts say? You know?
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
Or when they ask the question, so why aren't you married? Which is
Wait.
heard as, what is wrong with you? On the outside, you look like this is great. Why haven't you figured this out? Absolutely. Not that someone hasn't said that question to me recently either.
We've had this talk.
Tippy top of the head and just move
Yeah.
from point to point. I recognize the fact
I recognize the fact
that being married
that being married
is still a really culturally normative thing.
is still a real culturally normative thing.
And because it is culturally normative,
As it culturally normative,
people don't really know how to talk about it
people don't really know how to talk about it.
because they can only see it through the lens
You can only see it through the lens.
of what they perceive as normative.
They can only see it in the lens of what they perceive as normative.
And so when they are asking a question,
And so when they're asking the question,
it's easy to feel like they are judging us
it's easy to feel like they're judging us.
and saying that there must be something wrong with us.
There must be something wrong with us.
Because if there wasn't something wrong with us,
There wasn't something wrong with us.
then we would be normal too,
And we would be normal too.
because we'd be doing the things that everybody is doing.
We'd be doing the things that everybody else is doing.
And I also recognize the fact,
I also recognize the fact.
culturally, we are redefining
Culturally, we're redefining
what adulthood looks like,
what adulthood looks like,
what relationships look like.
what relationships look like,
But there are still the cultural values
what cultural values
from the time of arranged marriages,
from the time of arranged marriages,
laying over the top of
being over the top of
a community and a worldview that is in flux.
A community and worldview that is in flux.
And so it becomes difficult as we live our truth,
And so it becomes difficult as we live our truth,
bumping against old norms
bumping against old norms,
and bumping against old standards.
bumping against old standards.
And so the part of me
And the part of me
knows that I'm making the right choices for me,
knows that I'm making the right choices for me,
is bumping into the part
and it's bumping into the part
that I want to belong,
that I want to belong,
which wants me to be quote unquote normal.
who wants me to be quote unquote normal.
And so I give myself permission
I give myself permission
to know that I can be truly me
that I could be truly me
and still be connected to the people I love.
and still be connected to the people I love.
Nice deep breath.
Mhm.
Great. And so what do you notice with that?
Feel more centered and grounded, and yeah, just smiled at everything that you said, that we tapped on, that we all tapped on.
Awesome. Perfect.
Thank you.
Excellent. You bet. So one thing that I want to point out inside of that, so we go back to that place where we started, we were talking about through whose eyes and by what standard. And you'll notice in that round of tapping, that last little bit that we were doing is we were confronting the standard in which Anna Maria was judging herself against, which is culturally normative to be married at this point in life as an adult. And so one of the ways that it makes it easier for us to be who we want to be and feel comfortable and outside of our own skin and feel worthy is to dismantle the you must be this tall to ride this ride benchmarks that are saying what we're supposed to be doing and looking at them to see why they are there. Because oftentimes what we're doing is we're judging ourselves against something that everybody just accepts as true. And we recognize the fact that that might have been useful at some point in history, and it might even still be useful for some people now, but it's no longer useful for us. And being able to be comfortable inside of recognizing the standards that we really want to be judging ourselves against. So, we're going to finish up with a little tapping, but just as one more reminder for you, in a couple of weeks, I am doing Mastering the Art of Delivery. You know, the processes that we've been going through, the way that we have been dissecting these issues, like the way that we're looking at worthiness and how we judge ourselves, is one of the ways that when we are tapping on our own, when we're tapping with others, when we have these lenses, it makes it so much easier for us to do. It gives us a foundation of knowing where to start. It helps us to understand the healing process. That last little example where we are dismantling a belief, a standard, is understanding the healing process. It's not just, I have to feel good about myself, but I have to let go of this belief that is no longer useful for me. When we recognize that as part of the process, it's going to make it easier for us to have transformation for ourselves or those that we're working with. We're going to find root causes much quicker, and we're going to clear the issues. Like just, you know, we tapped of the time that we've had in the hour today, we tapped for about 35 minutes. And look at how far we came. Look at how far you've come, even though we weren't tapping on your issues as we tuned into this stuff. It's a 2-day training. I'm offering it 3 times. Just before I jumped on this particular call, I was looking at it. There are only 2 seats left on the first weekend. So if you want to sign up for the first weekend, it's something that you're probably going to want to do today or tomorrow before that runs out. Like this, there's going to be a presentation of a bunch of content. We're going to do it over 2 days. There's going to be a demonstration where we're going to work with folks, and you're actually going to get a chance to try this stuff, not just work with me, but get a chance firsthand in your own life with other folks in the class. It's going to be super awesome. We're going to record everything so you can go back, so that if we do tap on something in class, in the training that you want to go back to because you were training and you weren't in the middle of it, then you're going to have an opportunity to really re-listen to it. And then the last thing I think is really awesome is after I do the classes, I'm going to do 3 classes just like this, just for the participants, so that you can be in a situation where you can take what you learn in the class, try it on your own, try it with other people, have some experience, and get a chance to come back in and do it. All the information is at mastertheartofdelivery.com. If you use the discount code Zoom, you're going to get 50% off. If you have questions, email me, Gene@tappingqa.com. I'll put this slide back up in a moment after we finish with a little tapping here at the end of class. If we need to jump on Zoom and have a conversation about the class, if you have some questions, please let me know. I would love it if you joined us for that. So tapping the side of the hand. Everybody take a nice big deep breath for me. Tippy top of the head, just move from point to point, repeating after me. I recognize the fact there is a part of me that wants to belong. There's a part of me that wants to be seen as good. There's a part of me that wants me to be seen as valuable. And because this is the case, there's a part of me that's constantly evaluating how I fit in. A part of me that wants to know I am like everyone else. And it's not a failing on my part that I have this very human desire. It's very human to want to be connected. It's very human to want to be loved. It's very human to want to participate with others. I give myself permission to know it is possible for me to understand, because of how I have been made, I'm worthy to exist. I'm worthy to be seen. I'm worthy to be heard. I'm worthy of having opportunities. I'm worthy of being happy. I'm worthy of thriving. And it is also okay for me to struggle with that sense a little bit. To try and find my place in the world. It is a process. And it's okay, it's a process. Because I have the tools to continue the healing process. Nice big deep breath.